Good morning, everybody. We will go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's good to see you on a Saturday morning when I know it's a holiday weekend. You could be doing other things, but we will go ahead and get started. I'll let you know I do have to leave around 10:30, 10:40ish, somewhere in there, but these folks might be able to stay a little longer to address questions and also mingle with you a little bit afterwards if there are other questions you have that you don't want to ask in front of a whole bunch of other people. So anyway, I'm State Senator Cindy Holscher. Again, thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off and let each one of our folks here introduce themselves, give a little bit of an update in terms of the committees they're on, and probably just kind of an overview of the main activity that happened in those committees in terms of potential bills that have moved forward or maybe potential bills we stopped. So we'll go ahead and hand it over to Linda, Representative Featherston. Let's give her applause.
Hello. I am a music major. I should be able to operate a microphone. So I'm Linda Featherston. I represent the 16th district in the House. So that starts up at Oak Park Mall. It goes down through Johnson County Community College, and then we go down to the KU Edwards campus at 129th Street. We're roughly between 69 Highway and Flum, except up top, they knocked Lenexa out of my district. So Quivira up top. So I am the ranking member on local government. I am on the water committee. I'm on the education committee, and I am the ranking member on the agriculture committee. So I am currently in a crossing fingers pattern from now until sine die that there are two pretty objectionable bills that are in conference committee in ag that are currently a battle between a House member and the Senate president. So I'm just hoping that battle continues and those don't come. One would, what would it would remove like any municipality's ability to have any kind of regulations for people who want to like open up their farm for tours. So I'm kind of big on safety, and I think we should have some guidelines if we're going to have groups of kids out. That seems important. The other one is the pesticide bill, which has now been tied to school lunches. So the school lunch part is fine. It's removing chemicals and certain dyes from school lunches. That's fine. We got some amendments on to like ease it in and make it easier on school districts. I don't know what school districts have left in their freezer at the end of the year, but we certainly wouldn't want to be throwing away food. But the other half of it that's been a real problem in my normally peaceful committee is a pesticide bill, which, they've called a labeling bill over and over, but every amendment I've put forth to clarify it's a labeling bill has been shot down by special interests. So what it does is agricultural producers and anybody who uses pesticides would give up the right to litigation based on common law. So I've gotten such a good education from Representative Osman on failure to warn. So here's the geeky part. If a pesticide company finds out that there is a problem, that they're causing a problem within that relabeling period, they are obligated by failure to warn to let you know. But this would take that away. So I really don't think that's a great idea to give up your rights. I have no desire to take away agriculture producers' right to use pesticides, fertilizers, all those things. That's their business. That's not my business. They can read the label. They can figure out how to use it properly. But I wouldn't be giving up my rights for that. So education has been wild. I think the positive note is the vote count on the voucher bill is certainly sustainable if a veto were to be issued. So that's good. Local government is usually very peaceful. We've had some real weird bills this year about like electing library boards, which I feel like is step one to banning books. So not great, but mostly peaceful. And water does continue to be the best committee in all of Topeka. We rarely have any kind of political dissension. It's just how are we going to sustain water in Western Kansas and improve the quality of water here in Eastern Kansas. So that committee, again, tends to function very, very well. Probably how every committee should function, actually. So there's where we are.
Hello, good morning. My name is Dan Osman. I'm the representative for District 48 that goes from about 119th Street to 159th Street and Schweitzer to Metcalf, approximately in sort of like a zigzaggy pattern. So I'm on Fed and State Affairs, Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, and I'm also the ranking member on Judiciary, where we had probably like 700,000 bills this session. It was insane. A number of them were good. They basically, a lot of them dealt with like increasing the level of penalty by 1 for a variety of crimes. And for some of them, it was good. For some of them, you're like, what are we doing? This is not going to necessarily like stop crime, because they're going to be back next year and saying, hey, crime's still going on. We increased the penalty. Overall, it was okay. But I think that honestly, I've come to the realization that we need to start looking at it next year on a really hardcore basis and saying, look, just because you are increasing the penalty by 1 doesn't mean we're actually doing anything. And I think that we really need to take a step back and look at the process, because one of the things that we do is every time we have a bill, we have a prison bed count that gets sent to us to say, if you pass this bill, here is what's going to happen to prisons across the state of Kansas. Sometimes no prison impact, sometimes 1 or 2. There was one bill in particular that at one point during the process had 515 as the number of beds that was going to impact over the next 10 years. That is an entire prison. And we've actually toned it down to only 220 beds. But there's a real conversation that we need to have. And we've been trying to discuss it. We can pass all of these bills being tough on crime, tough on crime, tough on crime, but you are delaying the process of prisons need to be built. If you're going to keep being tough on crime, prisons need to be built. And that's going to cost money, that's going to cost resources, and we are kicking the can down the road for the next legislature to deal with everything that we're dealing with now. So there's a lot that I can talk about, but I'm happy to I want to spend more time answering your questions. So I'm going to pass it off to Stephanie Sawyer-Clayton.
Thank you, Representative. Thank you, everyone, for extra round of applause, because he has to office with me. He's a very patient man. So he's only seen me throw things a couple of times, but that, in my defense, it was after really bad committee meetings. So I represent the area from Metcalf to State Line, mostly 83rd to 103rd, unless you are east of Mission, and then it is Somerset to 95th. So think like the Meadowbrook area, Corinth area, Ranch Mart, Knoll Hills. That would be me. So, and I have been proudly representing this district for a long time, for 14 years. I got elected when I was 5. It's amazing how that happens. But so I serve on a number of committees. I serve on federal and state affairs, which holds a lot of controversial issues, except for this year, because all we did were wildlife and parks bills. So I learned a lot about duck stamps and the way that works. So right on. Usually those would be in Linda's committee, agriculture, but for reasons I cannot ascertain, we covered a lot of things about hunting and fishing licenses, which I do avidly support. I am also the ranking minority member on the Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development Committee, and I am a member of the Tax Committee, and I'm also the vice chair of our only bipartisan committee, which is our Rules Committee. And so that handles all of the wonky parliamentary procedure issues. So if you want to fall asleep, I can start going into details about that, although it is a very important committee, especially when you're coming from the minority party, as I am. The way that we have to do things to get the policies that a lot of folks in Johnson County support is you have to be very shrewd and very strategic. Representative Osman is also the other minority member on Rules with me. And so just think about it as, like Fred and Ginger. We do the same work that the majority party does, but we have to do it backwards in high heels and work twice as hard with 1/3 of the people. And we lose all the time. But not all the time, because as Representative Featherston said, next week, actually starting on Thursday, we're supposed to have a 2-day veto session. We have, to my knowledge, passed almost every single conference committee report with the exception of the tax plan, which I will go into because I know that that's incredibly important to a lot of you. So we have passed all of those off of the House floor. So last week was our conference committee week where the chair, vice chair, and ranking minority member on the House committee met with the Senate side, and then we would sit there and hammer out and hash out the differences between the Senate position and the House position. No offense, I was calling her by her. Holscher started off in the House. But with no offense to Holscher here, the House position is usually superior. So one of the things that passed out of my committee that I'm ranking on was the Chiefs package. And so that included the Star Bond extension, because the Star Bond economic development incentive tool, which doesn't just help the stadium, it helps a lot of other projects throughout the state, but that was going to sunset this year. So that sunset needed to be extended, but it was also combined with, that's the reason why I call it a package, with the Sports Authority bill. And so that is a board that will basically govern a lot of the things having to do with the stadium, which will be publicly owned. So it will belong to the state. The Chiefs will just be leasing it. And so that covers who is on the board, how long the terms are, who appoints them, where they can be appointed from, how that board is structured. And this is incredibly important because while that board does not get paid, they get unlimited, gifts per diem, that sort of thing. And it is incredibly powerful. It is 11 members. We fought hard to make sure that the mayor of Olathe, where the practice facility will go, and the mayor of the unified government in Wyandotte County, they themselves will either be on the board or they will get to appoint people onto the board. So one of the big problems that I ended up having with the package, because I, again, as ranking minority member, I knew that our governor was highly supportive of this plan. And so it was my job to make sure that we got the best possible bill through. And I knew it was going to pass, but I ultimately did not vote in support of it. And one of the main reasons why I did not is that on this sports authority, where the people can be appointed from, it's just from the entire state of Kansas. There is nothing in that bill that says that not every single person could be someone from Colby or Wichita telling the Kansas City area our business. And ultimately, this is a big problem that I have with the state. I'm talking way too long, but I'll try and keep it shorter. I'll talk about tax later. But in any case, one of the big issues that I have with this is that we have the highest level of population. So most of the people in the state live in the Kansas City area because that's where the jobs are. We have most of the money. Johnson County is a significant portion of Kansas's GDP. If you add in Wyandotte, it's even more. And yet we have very little power when it comes to statewide governing. And that's a problem because I look at it and I see it as a representation issue where our manpower and where our money is being exploited by people that don't live in this area of the state. So could not support it, but it did pass. And I don't think the governor has signed it yet, but I am going to assume that she will. And I wish everyone in regards to that all the best. But ultimately, it was just too many problems for me to support. Tax is one of the few things that we haven't done yet. It has been a battle between the House position and the Senate position on property tax relief. Our Senate tax chair is very, she really digs in her heels. She firmly believes that capping valuations will lead to lower taxes for everyone. But part of the problem is that if you cap valuations, it sounds good. Like, I don't like the way that my valuations keep jumping on my house. But our local governments end up having to raise taxes instead. And then this means things like we're paying more in car tax, in our automobile tax, which I don't like paying that at all, let alone more. It means that our mill levies are potentially going up. So to me, I see it as smoke and mirrors, and I don't like lying to the public. I find that to be, pretty abhorrent. And like bare minimum as an elected official, don't lie. Right. And so I consider that to be a little bit disingenuous when it comes to policy. So the House position tends to support putting our valuations. Right now, they spike quite a bit. We all, know what that's like. Right. So this would set it at a 6-year rolling average. or we're also looking at other potential possibilities. But of course, when it comes to the property tax issue, we have to make sure that we are respecting local government, because if we do anything that's too egregious to them, we're not cutting your taxes, we're still raising them. So trying to come up with the best plan, making sure that we come up with a decent package, but the House tends to hold and reject Senate positions. And our speaker appears to be behind us and very supportive. It's the one thing that we tend to be unified on. So sometimes we do get along. I'll pass it off to Senator Holscher. I've got a lot more to say, but I've taken up way too much time. So thank you for having me.
Good morning. Did everybody get their trees? Very importantly. Yes. I was asked by 4 different people on the way into the building, where do we get the trees? And I'm like, I have no idea. I didn't know this was going on this morning. But thank you all again for being here. I'll give you a quick update on my committees and some of the things that happened, as well as some of the bills I brought forward this session. I have served on the healthcare committee, I will say, ever since I entered the legislature, first 2 terms in the House and then crossing over to the Senate. It has been interesting times in that committee, especially since COVID. And it feels like our committee in the Senate, in terms of healthcare, still hasn't gotten over the effects of COVID. In fact, this past session, or this current session, pretty much at the last day of committee hearings, guess what? A COVID bill showed up, essentially, that was anti-vax. And I was kind of hoping we were past all of that, because we have had, feels like dozens and dozens of anti-vax bills over the years. And this session in committee, hadn't heard anything. I was kind of boring, which was nice, in the healthcare committee. And then all of a sudden, like I said, there was an anti-vax bill that came up that really was looking at changing how, vaccines are implemented and utilized across the state. I don't think that one passed out of committee, but I don't think, it's moving forward. Plus, we're heading to veto session. Bills should not be moving forward at this point, although we've seen some different things done in the past. So hopefully that bill goes away. Probably the biggest thing that did happen in healthcare, though, in that committee was changing the nursing board. And that bill came with a lot of controversy in terms of the makeup of the board and who serves, how they're appointed. And ultimately, I feel that there were some issues there that do need to be addressed. But that bill, overall, I believe, changed 30 statutes. That's a huge number. And we had basically 1 day to review it. And some of those issues in terms of the statutes that were being changed, these were very complex issues. So ultimately, I voted no on it because I didn't feel, one, that we had enough time to really understand all the issues and to be able to make sure that what was being proposed addressed those issues. But again, 30 statutes being changed in basically a 1-hour hearing. Actually, it wasn't even that long. There was another bill that was heard that day. So really didn't feel like enough vetting in terms of everything that was happening there. Otherwise, like I said, healthcare was a little bit quieter this year, which is a good thing. I also serve on the COGE committee. This committee started last year. Was that last year? Last session, yeah. Similar to the DOGE committee on the federal level, then we got the COGE committee. And while it's promoted as being a committee to address inefficiencies and find waste, it doesn't feel like that's what we do in this committee. Instead, what we have seen are bills that consistently seem to add red tape to things like our SNAP program, our free lunch program. And keep in mind, we already have checks in place on those different programs. We already have an audit process that can be utilized. But these different bills that were brought forward, not only did they add more layers of bureaucracy, but they cost millions of dollars often to implement these additional checks being put in place. And ultimately, what it feels like is just another way to try to keep people off, vulnerable people, off the programs that we have in place for them. As it ends up, of course, I voted against every single one of those bills because, again, doesn't make sense to me to potentially look for maybe $24 of fraud by spending millions and millions of dollars and adding more red tape. I also serve on the budget committee. I will share with you a quote that was from Adam Proffitt, the state budget director, and his words were this: "In my estimation, this is the worst budget I've ever seen." Ta-da! That's what came forward. I, of course, voted no. I think all of my peers here voted no, mainly because absolutely severe underfunding of special ed no funding for Blueprint for Literacy, a program that we said was so important that we spent hours and hours on developing a couple of years ago. No funding for that. Just feels like an absolute disregard for our main obligation in terms of funding our schools. And of course, there were other problems there too. A big problem I had was, the day before we worked the budget on the floor, all of a sudden it was found there was $11 million of a special giveaway to Commerce for an undesignated project. I have a problem with that, not knowing what $11 million is for, and some apparently, there were a couple people on committee that were given information about what this undisclosed project is, but the rest of us were just supposed to say, okay, that's fine, $11 million for this project. I did not agree with that by any means. I did bring an amendment on the floor as well as in committee to fund special education. I will just tell you this. My peers sadly do not have the appetite for doing the right thing when it comes to funding our schools. I shared this with somebody in the audience earlier to give you a little bit of perspective. Out of 40 senators, now this was as of 2 years ago, there were only 6 of us who had children who attended public schools within the past decade. So you have a body of roughly 34 people who are making decisions about our public schools who either sent their kids to private, homeschooled, or of an age that just have had no connection to our public schools.
That explains the cell phone ban.
Doesn't it though? And that's very concerning. It's the most important thing we do on the state level, our obligation. And again, we have a body of people without any connection to our schools. And I'm guessing it's probably pretty similar in the House. Numbers are probably a little better in terms of, again, people having connection to our public schools. But it's just astounding to me. I will tell you, I do substitute in the Olathe School District. I encourage that for all of my peers. I just encourage them, go spend a day in a school. But that's hard to seem to convince people that they need to do. So, like I said, very concerned with what was done with the budget this year, and ultimately I did not support it. I did introduce several different bills. Again, fully funding special education. I introduced a bill. A lot of the bills I introduced were really revolve around affordability. As I've done town halls across the state, I mean, people are struggling with access to affordable health care, affordable child care. Affordable housing is huge, whether it's rural or urban. Like I said, people just across the state are struggling with affordability. So most of my bills that I've introduced revolve around that topic. I introduced a bill to increase the minimum wage to $16 an hour. Boy, a lot of talk about that. And, that is something obviously the public supports. But my peers across the aisle really didn't seem to want to hear much about that and kind of kept trying to push that away. Also brought forward a bill to increase the number of free school lunches in terms of you have a number of kids who are on reduced lunch. The amount of money to invest to get to that number to free school lunch, we could have probably used that $11 million that was hidden in the budget at the last minute to fund some more school lunches. So I introduced that bill. I introduced a couple other ones too, like I said, that revolve around affordability. In fact, some of them are very specific. We have, just to give you an example, we have a situation in Wichita where one person owns over a third of the rental properties. He doesn't even live in Wichita. He lives in Oklahoma. And what happens is when people are late on their payments, there's no cap on the fees that can be charged. So guess what happens? Charges exorbitant fees. People can't pay those fees. And then they get evicted, and then that creates a horrible cycle of trying to help people get homes when, like I said, they have an eviction on their record, essentially. So I did bring forward that bill as well. We got sometimes you have to take victory in the fact that you got conversations started on a topic. Because that bill, again, didn't move forward. Keep in mind, the other side controls the agenda in terms of what they decide moves forward. And like I said, that bill did not get a hearing, but I brought it forward as an amendment on the floor, and we got the conversation started to where people now are at least aware of the fact of what's going on, and that this is what creates part of that cycle of homelessness, and that we're going to have to address this issue. unfortunately, like I said, the other side controls the agenda in terms of most of the issues and the bills that get moved forward. Boy, a lot of culture war bills this year. And sadly, I think we were in our 9th week in the Senate before I heard any bill debated on the floor that had something to do with affordability. And it was just a very, very small issue in terms of addressing affordability. But otherwise, a whole lot of things about culture wars. Boy, I don't know, a few license plate bills, things like that. So probably not the session any of us wanted. The biggest victories will come in defeating some of these bad bills, some of the voucher bills, as well as we'll have vetoes coming forward on Thursday and Friday that we'll be working to sustain. And hopefully, I don't have a lot of faith in my Senate peers on sustaining some of those vetoes, but some of our friends in the House, I think, are going to help us out on that. One victory I do want you to know about, actually two, PBM reform did make it through this year. That should help lower the cost of some medications and some prescriptions. So that did make it through. And then one victory that I want to give all of us credit and the people here in this room. Several months ago, the GOP started talking about redistricting, which would have been very bad for this state. I'm happy to say I've got people across the state who joined in and sending emails as well as making phone calls. Some folks here in this room did that. And as a result of that and voicing opposition, the other side was never able to get enough support to move forward with that. So thank you for your work on that. So that was a big victory. We will go ahead now and turn it over for questions. If there's somebody that you want here to address a particular question, that's fine. Otherwise, we will probably just jump in to answer your questions.
I think I, well, no, I'm going to miss this. I need it to really, really ring so that my, I didn't really have the Chiefs on my radar when I walked in the door, but when you said that, I understand that the proposed stadium does not have a retractable roof. Is that right?
I believe that it is a fully domed stadium.
That is the dumbest idea ever. Why in the world would I want to watch a football game inside at the end of September and October when it's perfect football weather? That is the dumbest thing that we did. We never got the retractable roof at Arrowhead, and that really hurt us. I don't want to watch a football game inside at the end of September.
Real. I get it.
And even in July for a concert, if it's a nice summer night, why would I want to be inside?
Yeah, I'd rather go to Sandstone, which is, by the way, what it is called. So,
Yeah, no, I get it. It's Sandstone to me too.
yeah.
Yeah, it is Sandstone. Yes, thank you. And I know that you will continue to work on Medicaid expansion and at least medical marijuana. Those are also two things that it's like so embarrassing that we don't have those yet.
Yeah, and I will address that. One thing I found out, we actually got Medicaid expansion passed. Was it my first term or?
Yeah, it
was
was
your
your
first term.
sitting promised to get it through
Yeah,
and needless to say, thank you for replacing him.
we got it passed.
Yeah, and then Tori Arbuckle flipped her vote and.
And we fell too short.
Yeah, we fell too short in the House and it was overridden, or no, it was sustained because that was when Brownback was governor.
Yeah, so got
I
vetoed.
know it's been, I
Yeah.
know it's every year it's mentioned.
Yes, but here's what I wanted to tell you. Interestingly, the past couple of sessions, what I've noticed is the advocates that usually are there educating our new legislators about the benefits of Medicaid expansion, they've gone silent. And to me, that's a huge issue because what's happening then otherwise, all they're hearing from are the people against. They're there pretty much every day talking about why it's wrong.
Being in the same boat with Florida, Texas, Mississippi, Texas, all of those states, that's not a good one for Kansas either.
No, it's not. But I will continue to advocate, get those advocacy organizations out there back to doing hopefully what they're supposed to do in terms of educating our new legislators about the benefits. Maybe get some new friends this fall too after the elections to help us move forward on that issue and medicinal cannabis.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, thank you for being here. When I was at another meeting like this, and I don't remember who said it, I think someone mentioned that in the next election cycle, the super majority would be gone.
Hope so.
So I just wanted to have somebody else tell me that so I could start feeling a little better. And I can't remember the second part of my question. Oh, I do. I got an email from the Missouri that said they needed Democratic candidates to run in elections where there was no Democrat. And I tried to get the same information for Kansas. And so my question is there a Democrat running everywhere we need them to be running?
I guess I can speak to that, although I don't like to discuss a lot of partisan issues at a public forum. But I will say I have the philosophy that I think that recruiting someone to run in every seat is cruel to the candidate. If it is a deep red district, you putting in all of that effort knowing that you're going to lose, that's a really mean ask to make of someone. And so I don't like being cruel to candidates. I like recruiting people in seats where they actually have a chance to win. And so there's that. Now, as far as breaking the supermajority, proper strategy for any political party would be to make sure that you are focusing on districts that have flippable potential. And so that comes from focusing any money. And again, like the Republicans do this too, everyone's going to be focusing probably on the same 10 seats because those are the ones that have the potential to be flipped to the other party. You're either defense in the case of the majority party or offense in the case of the minority party. And those are the ones that people focus on. If you recruit someone for every seat, then everyone is trying to raise money in a finite amount of donors here in Kansas. And then you have people raising money in unwinnable seats, and that money goes to waste when it could have gone to flippable seats. So to me, I believe in a strategic approach. I do not believe in a burn it all down, get a candidate in every seat approach, because there is, if we were a wealthier state with more wealthy people, then that would make sense. But there's only so many funds that can be raised. How many times do you get asked for money? We legally can't do that right now because it's session, but trust me, if we could, we would be. So that's one of those things where I believe in a laser-focused strategic approach and not in a recruit someone for every seat. I think that's a waste of time and money.
But my philosophy might be different than others.
I will add, Missouri's filing deadline has passed, and ours isn't until June 1st. So I know we have a lot of people out talking to a lot of people to try to get good quality candidates. And I kind of share Representative Sawyer Clayton's feelings. We just need to be really honest about what the metrics of a district are. However, I did read a book last summer that said you could accidentally flip 5 seats just by having a candidate there. So, it's a real, who knows. What I can say is when I was elected in 2020, we needed 1 seat to break the supermajority. When I was reelected in 22, we needed then 3 seats, and now we're at 5 seats. And the possibly bigger tragedy of that is we have lost, minus PBM reform, our moderate Republicans with strong spines. I'm probably not supposed to say this as an elected Democratic official, but I will say it, I don't care. I don't care if we elect more Democrats. I don't care if we elect just normal, regular Republicans like my parents who support schools and who will stand up for their constituents. And I mean, we saw quite a coup in the House occur over this pharmacy benefit management reform. We were sent home a day and a half early because the speaker did not want to address it. We're done. And I've not seen that. Maybe you've seen that in your time. And so I know these people are there for certain issues. And I know there are other health issues they would like to get passed. So I would hope we just need a better balance. A supermajority isn't good for anybody. There's no discussion. It's like, this is how it's going to be. All right, well, I don't know that many people who live on the far edges of either political party. So if we could just take one big step to the middle, I think we would be more representative of Kansans and what Kansans want.
I just wanted to clarify, just so you know, all 125 seats in the House will be on the ballot this fall. Senate is not. 2 more years is when Senate is on the ballot. And to that question, in terms of the supermajority, I will tell you this, I'm committed to winning my race. I'm committed to flipping some of those seats because we have to break that supermajority. As Linda outlined, sorry, Representative Featherston, as Linda outlined, thank you. We've gone backwards in the past few years. And just to illustrate more clearly, when I entered the House in 2017, we had 38, 39 Democrats. We had 37 Republican moderates. We all kind of worked together. That's how we ended the Brownback experiment. Stephanie and I, she was Republican then. Stephanie and I were co-founders of the Women's Bipartisan Caucus. We're the group that put the bill together that ended the experiment. We passed Medicaid expansion. We did some other great things. I would say folks across the aisle didn't like that. They invested heavily in our legislative races. And what we have seen is 37 moderates down to one moderate Republican, really. Sometimes 2, depending on the issue. And as Linda illustrated too, the number of Democrats has gone backwards. That's an absolute problem. And it's unsustainable, frankly, in terms of where we are, because the supermajority is eroding voting rights. They're very much attacking our schools in terms of funding. And just overall, the foundation of our democracy and our rights. So like I said, it's absolutely unsustainable where we are. So I'm going to be working with candidates to help flip those seats. I do want to mention, I know we have at least one candidate here. Sherry, would you wave? And here's the advice I want to give everybody. Do we have any other candidates? Okay. Okay. Are you sure?
It's really fun.
If you raise your hand or make eye contact with me, I will probably try to recruit you.
I thought you said any other question.
No. Yeah. Okay. Here's my advice to everybody. Please donate to these candidates and these districts that are flippable. Sherry's in a district that is, I would say, very much purplish. We can take that one. Please donate to her. Sometimes people ask, who else should I donate to, or other organizations? I would tell you, you could donate to the House Caucus, but the best thing you can do is donate directly to the candidate. What's the limit? $2,000? Okay, so you got a ways to work with there. So, like I said, make sure you donate to our candidates. The other thing is, this is what I'm telling everybody: find 5 friends every week as you're out there, walking your dog, in your yard, doing work, whatever. Talk to 5 people about upcoming elections and how absolutely important it is that they get out and vote. And I'll tell you this, if they're informed, they'll say, well, absolutely, I'm going to get out and vote. If they're not very informed, what are they going to do? They're going to say to you, well, what's on the ballot that I need to worry about? Your schools. The amendment that we have in August, there are so many things. Your tax rate is on the ballot. Everything is on the ballot. And then explain to them that we got to have people showing up. And here's the thing, if they're an uninformed voter, typically what they're going to do is they're going to ask you, well, who do I vote for? And where do I go? Use your influence. 5 friends every week. Talk to them, talk about elections, talk about getting out to vote. That's what we need you to do. Okay, now a question.
Thank you. I'm kind of going a little bit backwards here, but you were talking about flipping seats, and let me just give you this example. I'm from Montgomery County, Independence, Kansas, Southeast Kansas. My brother still lives there. I have lived in Kansas City for some time now. Anyway, he is a Democrat, but he registers as a Republican because there's never any Democrats running. And he wants to at least influence who's on the ballot. And it's very frustrating down there, as you know, if you know about that part of the country and our state. So I hear what you're saying about wasting money down, places where it's 90% one party usually, but there are people that, they're locked in because you can't vote in the primary. Is that correct? They can't vote?
Correct.
They have to
Yes,
be?
we have, so in Kansas, we have closed primaries and both parties, they're in control of that, right? So the Democrats have a closed primary too. So, and that's an important thing to bring up too, because we do have, a couple of wild primaries on both sides. I'm going to assume that all of you will be voting in August regardless, because there is a constitutional amendment that changes the way that our Supreme Court justices are selected. It politicizes it and makes it about money as opposed to about merit and who's best for the job, the way it currently is. So I would expect you all would get out and vote in opposition of that to preserve our three branches of government. But while you're there, if I have any independent voters here, or unaffiliated, what I would suggest is what you can do is that when you go to the polling place, you can choose to either affiliate as Democrat or affiliate as Republican so that you can vote in either the gubernatorial primary for the Republicans or for the Democrats. So please pick one. Because there is a lot of influence as to who the Republican nominee for governor will be and who the Democratic nominee for governor will be. So whoever you like, just make sure you are playing in part of that game, right? If you are currently a member of a party and you want to vote in the other party's primary, you need to make sure that you are changing your registration prior to June 1st. Am I correct on that? Yes, yeah. It used to be that that the party affiliation changed. It used to be that you could just affiliate at any party at the ballot box. Now you can't do that unless you're unaffiliated. If you're affiliated with one party, if you're feeling a little crazy and you're a Democrat that wants to vote in the Republican primary, you have to switch that before June 1st. So, and that is also the filing deadline too. So a lot of stuff, just make sure, in fact, this is a great time. It's not really that nice outside. Go home, look up your voter registration, make sure you're in the party that you want to vote in August, make sure all of your information is correct. It's never a bad time to just check up on that registration and make sure that everything is to a T. Yes.
Is there any possibility that could be changed? So you don't have to have a affiliation to a party for a
The
primary?
parties don't want to change it. Neither of them want to change it because the Democrats want more Democrats and the Republicans want more Republicans. They do not want fluidity. And that makes sense, right? Because a lot of it's the registration numbers that I believe that, have an influence on how much money the national party groups come in. It's kind of one of the grosser parts of politics, although I think that it makes more sense to be affiliated with the party that most reflects your values so that you are signaling to the voters what you stand for. Hence my party switch, because I used to be a very moderate Republican and my voting record was very much the same as it is now, but the party kind of got away from me, so I thought I had better be honest with my constituents and make that switch. I think I did that like 8 years ago, so it's been a minute. So
Let me say this as well. So with regards to switching your party in order to vote in certain elections or other things, I'll tell you, I have a number of constituents in my district as well that are registered as Republican, and I knock on their door and they're like, "You're a Democrat? Fantastic. I'll vote for you." It happens all the time. It happens across every district. And it has good strategic value. Number one, in terms of like if you wish to vote in a certain election. Number two, in collecting information from opposition to find out what everybody across the spectrum is talking about that has value. Here's one thing I will caution about though. If you are a Democrat and nobody in your household is registered as a Democrat, what that will mean, in terms of like overall, your county party is not counting your household as a Democrat. Your state party will not be counting your household as a Democrat. National parties, it trickles up. And in terms of like playability in terms of your district, when we talk about, are you finding candidates to run in this district? This has a long-term ramification in terms of like, no, there's no Democrats here. It doesn't look like a winnable seat, but there are a number of households that might be Democrat, but nobody's registered that way. So I'm just saying, like, there are ramifications to decisions on both ends of the spectrum.
You know, I used to tell people register as a Republican for the primary 10 years ago, 12 years ago, because we didn't have, you know, in some of our areas, we didn't have Democrats on the ballot. And where I live, I'm south of 435, south of Johnson County Community College. I mean, there was rarely a Democrat on the ballot until I ran, and then a few others ran. So I would recommend to people to register as Republican to vote in the primary. Those days are gone, from what I, from all indications of the most recent elections, especially right here in Johnson County. We haven't been able to get a moderate through the primary in the past 3 election cycles. And I mean, it's a struggle anywhere else too across the state in terms of getting moderates through, thus going from 37 moderate Republicans to 1. So like I said, around here, you're going to have very competitive primaries for governor, U.S. Senate, maybe some other seats too. So, be a Democrat, vote, vote where there's a lot of things going on at this point. Because again, like I said, we just haven't been able to get moderates through the primaries on the Republican side. And I say that as a person who has a lot of friends who were moderates. They're all gone now from the House. And it's hard to get moderates to run because sometimes of the way they are treated by the party. So like I said, that's just kind of where we are. By all means, in some areas across the state, it might make sense still to register as a Republican to vote in the primary. Around this area, like I said, we're not getting them through the primaries. Somebody else had a question. Oh, yes, sir.
I have 2 questions.
Oh, hold on. I forgot to say this before. If you really, really want to get involved and help us flip these seats, become a precinct leader. Yes. I always want to make sure I mention that. Okay, go ahead.
Number 1, did the DOJ or COJ bill pass? And why does special ed seem to get special attention from overall education funding?
So the COJ committee, it's a committee that has had several bills. A number of them have moved forward. There were several different bills that basically, like I said, added red tape to school lunch, they added red tape to SNAP programs. So there were several different bills. A number of them moved forward. I will say, I feel like most of them didn't get a veto-proof vote in the Senate. So hopefully we'll be okay on those if they're vetoed and then we try to sustain them. But yeah, a number of them did move forward that, like I said, add more scrutiny to those programs, make it harder for people to actually participate in them who are eligible. What was the second part? I'm sorry. Special ed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It seems to me that, education funding is education funding. I've been going to these meetings and special ed always seems to be like a special part of it.
Yeah. So you have basically special ed and general education. Special ed, we are mandated by federal government to provide, and we should be providing. General education, we have been basically adequately funding because of the court case, Gannon. So if you hear legislators say that, well, and I hear this from some legislators on the other side of the aisle say that they've been working with the governor to ensure that general education is adequately funded. There's a court order there. So that's kind of what's been making sure that the legislature fulfills that obligation. Because I tell you this, it's a struggle every year just to get adequate funding for general ed. So special education has become the area where the legislature has basically been dodging responsibility. And because we are mandated to fund, let's say it only gets filled, 60%. If that bucket only gets to 60%, then we have to take from here and fill it up. Then what happens in terms of this bucket? We still have to educate those kids and we still have to pay for it. That comes to you through your local level, property taxes. And this is the point I keep trying to draw out to everybody. We're not going to get substantive property tax relief in this state until we're filling these. Because if we don't, then it's the local level that has to make up the difference and fill that gap. You're probably going to hear even this week about property tax relief bills and different things. I will tell you, most of those are gimmicks. Last year, one was passed, and I think the amount of relief was $36. You're not going to affect, again, property taxes until we really take care of the issues and fulfill the funding where we have the obligation.
So hey, just one more, so both general education and special ed are mandated
They're-
really?
Different levels of mandate. There's a requirement, obviously, that you have public schools, but in terms of like, so there's what's called a 504 or there's IEP, Individualized Educational Plan. Those are effectively contracts that you, as the student and the parents of that student, have a contract with the school district that there are certain things that will be provided. There are certain educational tools that will be provided. That contract can't be broken by the school district. There's federal law that has to be adhered to. There's state law. Yeah, yeah,
IDEA.
yeah.
Is the federal law, and then there's phase within IDEA for free appropriate education for all students. And that's where the special education piece comes in with your individualized education plans and your 504 for accommodations for students that need that support.
Thank you very much. There are, if we as a society, if we as a legislature, if Congress as Congress wants to have conversations about special ed and the obligations, that is its own separate conversation, and we can have those conversations. Right now, the law is the law, and school districts are following the law to their own detriment, because they have no choice but to follow the law. And what that means by following the law is that they are holding on to the hope that we as the state are also going to follow the law and fund them properly. We do not. And what that means is school districts across the state and specifically within Johnson County are suffering. Blue Valley alone is suffering to the tune of about $17 million over this last year. Our budget that we're having will not cover that deficit. It will cause them to go even further into the hole. Now, they are seriously living paycheck to paycheck right now. That is how dire the situation is. And there was conversations within Blue Valley about eliminating the fifth grade orchestra. And I'm not sure exactly where that ended up it being, but there was parents were outraged that they were going to end fifth grade orchestra. I have two girls that went through fifth grade orchestra. I love it. I support it. But this is a bellwether in terms of like the overall conversation that's going to happen. This is the first step. They are going to have to cut funding across the board in places that are not mandated by law to continue to adhere to law. And that is just the way it's going to be, and it's going to get worse next year.
Olathe reduced FTE to accommodate the
Yes.
cost in the budget, and that directly impacts all education because there are less teachers in the classroom, there are a larger class size. It's not the ideal, and Johnson County, whether it's Blue Valley, Chime Mission, Olathe, those schools are the bedrock of our county.
Oh,
They come here because they want good schools.
in the budget process, we actually had two amendments, I believe by Jared Owsley, that number one would increase the amount of funding to special education, not even to the constitutional level, but just increase it. That, yeah. But I'm saying it didn't even, his amendment didn't even get to that constitutional limit, but it was just an increase. That failed. Then he had a second amendment that said, okay, hold harmless. We're going to at least put special education funding at the level that we did last year. That failed. It is bad.
You know what did go in the budget though? A 4.4% raise for all legislators. We already just literally got a raise. And I believe this raise was scheduled, right? But you know what? The legislature has one main goal, and that is that we are the appropriators of funds. We call it the power of the purse, right? Purse doesn't have a lot in it, but it is your money that you give to us. Legislators gave themselves a raise, but didn't properly fund special ed. Unconscionable.
Isn't
this a voucher issue, this funding of the special ed? I mean, isn't it trying to lead us down the road towards jobs?
To a certain degree. Now, I will say that when I first came in, I thought, well, they're not trying to, defund education. This is ridiculous. Calm down, Stephanie. But after seeing this for a number of years, and I talk about this too when it comes to our voting rights. This is what we would call a war of attrition, which is basically, as my history professor said, you just start slowly wearing down. Because if they ran bills that completely, got rid of public education, well, we'd be, in trouble with our Constitution. It says it very clearly there in Article 6 that we are obligated to fully fund proper education. But so what we're seeing here, so for instance, you see this change in the way that the Supreme Court is being selected. Well, the legislature doesn't like the Supreme Court telling them what to do, right? Because the Supreme Court has ruled time and time again and has been like, no, that's what the Constitution says. You have to do the thing. And then the legislature begrudgingly does the thing, but they don't want to follow the Constitution. It's the same thing where it's like if you didn't like the police officer who kept pulling you over for speeding, saying, well, I'm just going to get him fired. Like, no, don't speed, right? But so that is what we're starting to see, is that at these various many levels and many areas, it's just these little changes. So then a lot of times the public looks and it's like, well, I know it's just an education tax credit, but that's not a voucher. And it's like, isn't it though? Because that was put in place in 2014 and we fought hard against it. I think it passed in the House by one vote after they kept us up all night for like days, not just one day, but for an entire week. And so you will see those types of small incremental changes, and that's what I think it's important to look out for. The other thing that's important to note too is that special education, a lot of times we think that that is just for special needs kids. Well, guess what else it includes? It includes gifted education, because any parent or teacher who has worked with gifted children knows that they are not the baseline either, So most education funding kind of affects this area in the middle, but you got the folks that are here and the folks that are here that all need extra attention. I think years ago they tried to carve out gifted education from special education. I think they heard very strongly from Johnson County on that one. It was adorable. But a lot of those legislators who tried that stupid thing are gone now, so they'll probably try it again. So make sure that you come back in force. Part of the reason why we have been able to stop this is because of you, because we have a very highly educated electorate that knows how to contact people and knows how to advocate for themselves and for the other people in your communities that can't advocate for themselves. So when we talk to our colleagues in other parts of the state, I tell them it's like, yeah, we have forums all the time and people show up and take notes. They know really detailed things, and that happens a lot. It's like, you guys are one of the reasons why we still have things as good as we do in the state.
I would like to know, for your ideas as to why so many of the Republicans are against funding public education, especially the ones who are in Johnson County, because we may have friends who can write to them. I mean, what is motivating them to be so negative on public education? I'm talking about what would influence Senator Thompson or Senator Warren or some of these other people. What can we do? I mean, I can write to Cindy all day long, but I know she's going to vote for public education.
And I apologize, I have to go, I have to bring something to my father.
Okay.
He's not doing well, so he needs soup, and I told him I'd be there by 11, so.
Okay.
I apologize, take care, you guys, thanks for
Okay,
having me.
well,
We're going to take over Senate 8 now.
thank you for being here, Stephanie.
So, it's really not appropriate that we try to project what our colleagues are thinking. That's pretty outside the rules of decorum. So many of them chirp, this isn't a voucher, this is a tax credit. This is not money going directly to private schools. I mean, Representative Hoskin described it best as a shell game. So Person A has their kids in private schools already. and they see, oh, if I donate $8,000, whatever my tuition is, to scholarship granting entity, then I will get an $8,000 credit on my taxes. It's not a deduction. It's not like the normal thing. It's a credit. So you could literally donate your tuition and get it credited back to yourself. So that it is. And, you know, they can talk all they want, but if we have 10 million, 20 million, $30 million for these tax credit scholarships, why don't we have 10, 20, $30 million for special education? Special education has not been fully funded since the Gannon lawsuit. I assume it was not part of the Gannon lawsuit because it's dictated by federal programs and because it was fully funded then. So now we've fully funded regular schools, which is a miracle in itself. But chip, this 92% is now down in the upper 60s. That's $1,000+ per every student, the special ed student and the regular ed student that is being diverted to special ed. That's 30% of your local option budget. So all those bonds that we vote on that cost property tax money, 30% of that is going to fill that hole. So I would say on my tax bill, schools are about half of my tax bill, and I'm happy to vote for them every single time. But, you know, if this hole over here was filled, then the schools wouldn't have to bond as much. I think we have a lot of colleagues who honestly don't believe in public education at all. That's really their question to answer. But, you know, 90% of Kansas students go to public schools. So they are leaving behind 90% of school students when they vote for vouchers. And that seems not right. And I had something else I was going to say, and I've totally forgotten.
But maybe you'd like to fill in.
I'll fill in. I'm not going to be able to comment on why a particular legislator votes the way that they do. What I can say, though, is that we have a lot of times where, say, Blue Valley School District or Shawnee Mission School District comes to us and says, do not vote this way because it will hurt us. In the same way as you hear that with Overland Park or Leawood or Johnson County as a whole, they come to us and say, this is going to have long-term ramifications for our district, our area. Do not support it. And there are many legislators that do not listen. And it is a widespread problem across all of Johnson County. We have a Johnson County delegation that doesn't meet, and we have no unified voice or form or anything like that. There are things that are not partisan that will help Johnson County, and we cannot get together and support what's going on in Johnson County. Sedgwick County, where Wichita is, has no problem getting together, Republicans and Democrats, Senate and House alike, all together to go, this is our area, we're going to support it, we're going to advocate for things that help Sedgwick County. They do that every day for years. We can't get it. And I'll tell you, it affects everything. I'm part of the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce, and we hear it from the business community as well. They say, why can't Johnson County play nicely together? And I cannot give them an answer other than we don't talk to one another. We don't go to meetings together where we can talk about Johnson County issues, and it is very, very frustrating.
Do you want to do Democrats talk to each other?
Yes. Yeah, of course. Of course we do. But again, I'll give you one example, just one example. So I was on the House Doge Committee over the summertime in the interim, and we were dealing with a corrections related issue. And this was an issue relating to recidivism rates, and there was a pool of money that was allocated towards helping those that were coming back out of jail time to get reintegrated into society. The pool of money, I don't know how much, it was like tens of millions of dollars across the state. And it's based on judicial district, effectively. There was a discussion about revising that formula because it was not going everywhere appropriately. Sedgwick County, the Sedgwick County fought tooth and nail to make sure that funding formula would not be investigated and re-implemented. Why? Because they were benefiting to the tune of about $9 to $10 million in excess of what they would have had it been revised. They were the largest winner in the system. The largest loser in the system currently, Johnson County, to the tune of about $2 to $3 million. And I pointed this out and said, again, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is not a House or Senate issue. This is an issue that Johnson County needs to get together and go, we have an issue. Central County is fighting to make sure that they get these funds and Johnson County doesn't. And we need to be equally fighting to make sure that this funding formula gets reintegrated. Didn't go anywhere. So they're doing another study for another year, and I guess we'll see in another year what happens with the funding. But this is just one example of many where we as Johnson County could get together and say, we're advocating for certain things in the budget that will help our area, and we don't do that. So
We do have about 10 more minutes left, so I think we'll wrap it up for public questions, but I think we'll both be here. Our next two town halls are the first Saturday of May, the first Saturday of June. We're moving back to 9:15 because we're hitting door knocking season, so we will all need to be out earlier, but we will be at the Central Resource Library for the next two. Now that also we're in campaign season soon, we're trying to be super fiscally conservative and pick venues that are free rather than charging them to our campaign. So thank you for being here. If you have any further questions, you can ask now. You can email us. Cross your fingers for the veto session that nothing terrible happens.
Thank you.